evening. Welcome to Fantasy Wildcard. I'm your host, Kev. You can follow me on Twitter at dynasty_goat. With me tonight, as always, is my amazing co-host. If you're his hairdresser, you know him by Max. But if you're not his hairdresser, you'll know him as Matt, who you can follow on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. Good evening, Matt.
Evening, Kev. How are you doing this evening?
Being honest, I'm pretty warm.
Yeah.
You can probably tell with a purple face, but eating's been on a little bit too long. So pretty warm, but feeling pretty good actually. How about you?
Yeah, really good. Got an exciting week coming up in terms of sport. The Masters coming up, big golf fan, so looking forward to that this weekend as well. If you're into the horse racing, which I am, the Grand Nationals this weekend, so plenty of opportunities to waste all my money and. Yeah, looking forward to it, and it's April as well. It's going back to the NFL. It's the month of the draft. Finally, we've made it there. So yeah, a lot of things to be excited about.
Indeed, it is. And I mentioned I was feeling a bit hot tonight. It only feels right. That ties in with something we wanted to mention on tonight's show, that we've both recently been on another podcast, another show called the Dynasty Hot Seat, hosted by our good mate Mags. So Dynasty Hot Seat, you can follow it on Twitter at Dynasty Hot Seat. Simple enough to remember. And basically the concept of the hot seat is you're doing a live draft. You're giving your strategy, your game theory, picking a team on the fly. The pressure's on. You're in the hot seat. Give a few tips as well at the start as to sort of how you like to attack Dynasty, what tips you can give to other people. We've both been on it recently. I have to brag a little bit and say I'm currently top of the Hall of Fame as the most liked video, but you was on a show, was it earlier this week, Matt, and you're coming for that top spot?
Absolutely. I recorded last night with Mags. My show's not quite gone up yet. I think next week when this podcast comes out, it's going to be the week after. So I've not had my chance yet to take you down, Kev. I know you've got that number one spot. I did mention at the end that all said and done, that all I'm after is that number one spot and beating you and Ali when Ali goes on. So that's all I cared about. I didn't really care about anything else. Just want people to smash that like button on that video and help me beat Kev. That's all I'm after. But no, great show to be on. Mags is brilliant. Love the concept of the show, doing a mock draft. Scratches that itch a little bit, doesn't it? When we all want to be getting in these startups, it's nice just to do a mock draft like that. I say there's not much pressure, but I know I definitely got a little bit hot on that hot seat. So just a great show. And if anybody wants to check it out, as Kev said, just go over and look at the Dynasty Hot Seat and take a look.
Yeah, 100% recommend it. It's actually fits in perfectly this time of year, startup season. It's going to give the viewers plenty of different ideas from a wide range of different draft spots as well. So please do check it out. Please subscribe on YouTube, and if there's any videos of me on, click the thumb up, and if there's videos of anybody else on, then
I'm gutted that they took away that thumbs down on YouTube, because I'd have bet some burners up then, Kevin, and got a few down likes on your video.
Sounds like me when I went on Reddit for a bit, that actually. And then also I'll mention that our charity streamathon, Saturday 21st of May, we've spoke about it a few times now, but the donation page is up. We've started receiving donations for a great cause from Mind Charity, who support people suffering with mental health. So it's a really worthy cause. We're doing a 16 hours of Dynasty talk on Saturday 21st of May, raising funds for them. Check out our link tree on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. That'll take you to the donation page. And thank you to everyone who's donated already. But yeah, we're a long way off this target. So any donation, no matter how small, will be hugely appreciated. And then on the day, come and check us out. We'll be having a right time, to be honest. 16 hours live stream non-stop.
That's it. We enjoyed it last year, didn't we, Kev? It was a great success. We raised some great money for a great charity in mind. And as I say, we really enjoyed it. We're a glutton for punishment, those 16 hours. But no, it flew by. It were great fun, and to do it again this year, it's going to be exciting. So yeah, if people can come and check it out and help by donating, it's hugely appreciated.
Indeed it is. So we'll get into the main part of today's show. So we'll be previewing the upcoming rookie class at the QB and running back positions. We're going to be really kind to the audience today. We're going to give you our wildcard consensus top 5. So it's going to be a combination of all three of our rankings. Obviously, Ali's not here tonight. We forgot to mention him at the start.
Yeah, didn't even mention. See, that shows how much we care, Kev. Didn't even mention that we haven't got as fellow co-host Ali on.
He's such a valued member of the Wildcard family. So I said to Matt before the show, I wonder how we can rinse Ali tonight. I wonder how we can give him some.
Didn't even need to. Just forgot all about him.
Didn't need to. But yeah, it's a combination of our three rankings, and I think that's really good because it gives you a nice blend of biases and different views. So we'll also give you our sleepers at the QB and the running back spot as well. So we're going to kick off with our wildcard consensus QB1. He's the only tier 1 QB in our rankings. He stands head and shoulders above the rest. And I'll let you take it away to begin with, Matt.
Yeah, Malik Willis. I mean, it's a simple one. We don't need to beat around the bush, do we, on this one? I think he's now cemented himself quite firmly as the QB1 in this class. I know all the rankings that you see posted around on Twitter, Willis seems to be a guy that stands out, especially from the fantasy standpoint, obviously. And it all boils down to, I think, that rushing upside. It's something that we've not seen for a while. People are comparing it to something like Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's quite at that kind of rushing ability that Lamar Jackson's got, but let's be honest, he's not too far behind. Just looking at the stats, 86 carries, 1,220 yards, 13 touchdowns last season. It's ridiculous. It is running back numbers basically. And then just having a little bit of a deeper dive, I looked at PFF's premium stats and just looked at the yards after contact, 794 yards. And if you just compare that amongst running backs, fullbacks, and QB, so covering all bases, every position, he's top 20. Yeah. So as I say, that's including running backs. He's right up there in terms of creating yards after the contact, something that you don't really see from quarterbacks. And then another stat that stands out even more so than that is 90 missed tackles forced, and that was first amongst every player, no matter what position. Malik Willis was number one in that stat. So yeah, just circling back, that we're talking fantasy, and when you've got a quarterback that can do things like that, running the ball, it's something we always get excited about, in it, Kev, in terms of putting up those fantasy numbers. And then as well as that, it's not like he can't throw the ball. Really solid pass of the ball. Obviously, the level of competition that he's played against and playing over at Liberty, it's obviously not up there in terms of elite talent. But I mean, the fact that he's still able to show out in terms of throwing the ball, and then, as I say, with that rushing ability added on top, it's exciting. I mean, he's the one that stands out more than any other quarterback in this class, and I think he's going to cement himself as that QB1 come NFL draft time. Yeah,
I've got to say with Willis, he's had a pretty perfect off-season, to be fair. He really stood out at the Senior Bowl. He smashed the combine, the off-season workouts. He's tested really well in interviews. There was a nice video of him giving money to a homeless person outside of the combine as well. So character-wise, people love him. He's had a perfect off-season. That's why his sort of draft status has risen. There's a lot of talk of where would he go before sort of the off season, and he's going to go high in the first round, as high as number 2 I've seen to the Lions. You've said it all really about rushing upside is immense. I think if you had to compare him to someone for last year, you'd probably say Trey Lance, someone that's got that amazing upside as a rusher. Still plenty of work to do as a passer. I think he'll need to sit a season or most of a season, but he's got fantastic tools. He's going to get high draft capital, and he's if everything stands as it is, he's going to be the QB1 pretty easily in my eyes over the next couple of guys we've got in tier 2. And then just thinking about where he'll land in startup season. Personally, I've got him in that same tier as your rookies from last season, your Trevor Lawrence, your Lance, your Fields. Probably even stick Jalen Hurts in there as well. Just someone that's young, that's, they've got a season, but after that it's kind of a bit murky. So I'd be putting him in that tier, and potentially there's an argument to be made that if you've got one of those guys, you could pivot down to Malik Willis, and you're going to get a guy that's getting an extra year because he's not played in the league yet. He's getting the full support of a coaching staff and a GM that's drafted him, whereas guys like maybe Fields or Trevor Lawrence haven't. So that's one thing to consider. Where's he landing for you in your startup rankings? Is it fair for me to put him in that spot?
Yeah, I think it is. Like I say, it's just that rushing upside, and I think it's something we all crave. That's why we fell in love with guys like you mentioned in Trey Lance last year. yeah, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be up there in terms of a Trey Lance. He's probably going to get a pretty similar draft capital, being potential top 5. I think is probably where he's going to go. But let's be honest, it's all just guesswork at the moment. I mean, we just got to look back maybe only a month ago. I know we did a mock draft, didn't we, with Anthony Corrente over at the Dynasty Drive. I mean, you took Willis, didn't you, Kevin? Where was that? That was like the end of the first round, I think, weren't it? In the rookie mock.
Yeah.
And that was when everyone was expecting him to be maybe a day 2 pick, not getting that first round draft capital. But as you say, the buzz seems to be building every day with Willis, and now that I feel like he is getting that hype, we're seeing loads of news come out that these NFL teams are falling in love with him and what he's doing on the field and off the field. It's all just building up nicely that he's going to get that solid draft capital, and that was all that really we had any concerns when it came to Willis. So the fact that we're expecting him to get that high draft capital, I think he's got a slot in terms of dynasty startups. He's got to be right up there. As you say, with guys like Lance and Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields from last year.
Definitely, he's a guy that's status has risen this offseason. Then we'll come on to our next guy he's kind of gone the opposite way. There's not been that much hype about him. He had a good season, but the injury at the end of the season sort of knocked any momentum. So who's a wildcard QB2, Matt?
Yeah, so we've gone for Matt Corral here, haven't we? I mean, I think you and Ali have got him QB2. I've got him just a touch lower at QB3. But like you said, yeah, he's proven himself to be pretty consistent over the last couple of years. Over 3,000 passing yards in 2020 and 2021. Finished 7th in the Heisman voting this past season. And I mean, we touched upon it in terms of rushing abilities. He's not quite at that level as a Malik Willis, but he's still able to extend those plays. He can move. He's not a statue. He's not thinking back to last year like a Mac Jones. He's able to at least make some moves out of the pocket, gain a few points in terms of fantasy, in terms of running the ball. And as I say, he can extend plays with his movement. So that little bit of upside, it's something that you've got to be excited about in terms of fantasy. And as I say, he's able to pass the ball. I think with a lot of these quarterbacks, a lot's going to boil down to what draft capital they get and where they land. It feels like this year more than any, this quarterback class, it's an absolute mess, isn't it? I mean, obviously we've separated Malik Willis, but I mean, behind that, you've probably got 3 or 4 guys that I'm fine if you've got any of these guys ranked anywhere above each other. It's just a bit of a mess. So I think a lot of it's going to boil down to that draft capital and landing spot. But yeah, another really interesting guy. Potential that it could be the first quarterback selected after Malik Willis. And yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what happens come the NFL draft.
Indeed, and I just want to give a big shout out to last year. We did a show on Devy, really, and the 2 quarterbacks that came up in that discussion was Malik Willis and Matt Corral. Now, we can't take all the credit for that. It was our guest, Rich, who, he's an interesting guy, but he brought those guys forward, and we spoke about them in length, and sort of faded guys like Howell and Spencer Rattler. So fair play to Rich for bringing up those guys, and surprisingly, he was right, which is a shock to us as well. But yeah, I think Matt Corral, he did really well. He's got that rushing upside. He's done it in a couple of different style offenses, and his last season did tighten up his accuracy because he's a bit of a gunslinger. He reminds me a lot of Zach Wilson in that respect, where I still think there's room for growth, but yeah, I just think the momentum's gone for him a little bit. And being honest, Corral and the next guy we're going to discuss, I've got them literally like very close. It's a point system. I base my model on ranking out of 100, and they're within half a point of each other. So I put Matt Corral there just because he was my QB1 last off season, and also you had him 3, so I thought I'd put him 2, just to be a little bit contrarian.
Just had to bump that ranking up a little bit.
Just had to make that wildcard expert consensus ranking a little bit manipulated. But it's a nice tease for the next guy who's the QB3. He's in the same tier as Corral. It's Sam Howell, who you are slightly higher on than me and Ali. We've got him 3, you've got him 2. Cat's whisker between these guys. I really like Sam Howell, to be honest. I think that early production was really special, actually, with guys like Daz Newsome on that team. Michael Carter was in that offense, Javonte Williams. So there might be a bit of North Carolina love there. I'm not sure if that's why he's higher in your rankings, but just a really solid prospect as a youngster. He broke out early. He's been a great passer in college, but I think he let it drop a little bit this past season. Now I know he lost a lot of weapons, but he had a really good wide receiver called Josh Downs, who's pretty well liked in the Devy circles, according to the Devy King. And he's a bit of a strange one, actually, because he was quite a sluggish player before this season. Then he broke out with like a ton of rush yards. But watching the tape, which I'm not great at, if I'm being honest, it still looked pretty slow to me. It looked like you're being tackled by, I don't know, future parking attendants and Chick-fil-A workers. Like if he runs like that in the NFL, he'll get absolutely creamed, like just not protecting himself. So I do have a bit of concerns. I think he's very Baker Mayfield-esque in the sense that I think he'll be a better real life than fantasy QB, but it was interesting to see that rush upside. What made you like him more than me?
Yeah, I just thought he's touched on. I think it is pretty neck and neck between Sam Howell and Matt Corral. I just think for Sam Howell, we saw that earlier production from Sam Howell. I mean, if we just go back to last year, like we talked about when we had Rich on, this guy was the consensus QB1 in Devy circles. I mean, everyone was getting super excited about him coming into the NFL. We touched upon it. He lost some weapons last year. I mean, losing Michael Carter, you're always going to be struggling losing an elite weapon like that. So the fact that he did lose all those weapons, Diami Brown, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, it does become tough having to deal with a new offense, new passing weapons. And I just think from what I saw as that from that early production, and then just showing that bit of rushing upside, something like you said, we didn't really see beforehand, but seeing that he's able to do it, I mean, I'm not expecting him to be the next Lamar Jackson and go running around like a headless chicken all the time, but at least we know he can make moves out of the pocket, extend plays. As I say, just pick up a few yards for you in terms of running the ball and getting you a few fantasy points, giving you maybe that little bit safer floor than what we were expecting originally from him, from what we saw in years before. But yeah, I just think he's an exciting prospect. And as I say, just that early breakout, the fact that he was able to produce early, and I just think we're being a little bit harsh on him that he's had a tough year this past year. But even so, he still put up decent numbers in terms of throwing the ball, and as I say, that added rushing as well. So I don't think it was a disastrous year for Sam Howell. I just feel like maybe the expectations were too high. Obviously, everyone getting excited about him, but before this year, maybe we were just expecting a little bit too much from him. But no, I still think that for me personally, I've got him just that touch above Matt Corral, and yeah, again, another player that's going to be exciting to see what kind of draft capital and where he ends up.
Yeah, it seems like between the three of us, we've got Corral and Howell very close. I mean, in your startups, where would these two guys, what sort of tier would they be going in? Would it be like your Wilson, your Mac Jones sort of range, or would it be a little bit earlier, a bit later than those guys?
Yeah, so I'm probably thinking around that QB 15 to going on towards the QB 20 mark. As I say, they don't quite have that upside that you're looking for. It's risky when you talk about these quarterbacks, especially, as I say, if we don't know they're going to get that early draft capital. I mean, we've seen it even with a guy taken first overall, Trevor Lawrence, and he struggles in his first year. I think we've been a little bit blessed, in honesty, in previous years, these quarterbacks coming in and just destroying it in terms of fantasy, guys like Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
So I just think, there's a little bit of risk attached to these guys. All these guys could potentially be late in the first round. We just don't know at this point. Looking at mock drafts, they're going all over the place. Seeing them go potentially. I mean, Sam Howell staying in Carolina, going to the Panthers.
Yeah, cheeky that
could be a nice one. And that would then give me a little bit more confidence knowing that he's got that little early draft capital. But at this moment in time, I'm probably putting him in that, like you touched on, I think really around that Zach Wilson kind of, Mac Jones, that kind of range of players at the moment. But yeah, it could change when we get around to the draft.
Indeed, and then we'll move on to a guy that's maybe a little bit lower than these in the tier sort of thing. He's in our tier 2, but thinking of startup tiers, he's probably a little bit low, and that's our QB4, Desmond Ridder. Now, I think he's a really interesting guy. I think he's an exciting prospect in the sense that draft capital is going to be particularly huge for this guy. I think most of the offseason I've been thinking sort of round 2, but there is pace picking up about maybe someone jumping into the late first to take him, a trade up, or I know I mentioned him at 2 for Willis, but Detroit at 32, they've got an option there if they want to take a high-end tackle or edge rush, which is usually a decent thing to do as a cornerstone if you're not going QB early. Lot to like about really the fact that he's sort of elevated a program at Cincinnati where he's been mentioned as an outstanding leader, someone that can lead a franchise as such. He's very athletic. He's got great size. I think there's still a bit of work to do as a passer, but he's got a lot of really good traits. Listening to guys that are smarter than me in the community. Draft capital is going to be massive. If he gets first round draft capital, I mean, I'm not going to say I'll put him above Malik Willis, but he'd be in that tier with Malik Willis. I think he'd definitely jump to QB2 for me. It'd get really close with him on that one. So
I just think it's interesting, like you say, because he is that player that's kind of on that tier, and is he going to get first round? Is he not? It kind of fits in nicely to thinking of like a Lamar Jackson, a guy that somebody moved up to get into the first round to get a guy, take a chance on this guy, and then they've got that option for that 5th year, that 5th year option when his rookie contract expires. That's something that I can see happening with someone like Desmond Ridder, a guy that's just on that peak of being in round 1. If a team wants it to commit move up, I mean, you just mentioned the fact that the Lions have got that 32 pick, then I'd see them being willing to move that pick. I mean, we know that the situation they're in at the moment, they're probably looking to still rebuild. So if somebody's willing to jump up into that first round to get rid of, then that's when it becomes exciting for us in fantasy, getting that first round draft capital. A team showing that they're committed to this guy, moving up to get him on and be able to get that 5th year option if they need it further down the line. I'm really excited about Ridder. We feel like a bit of a broken record. We just keep banging on about this Russian upside, but this is a guy that it fits into perfectly. I think he ran the best 40 time out of all the quarterbacks at the combine at 4.52. So there's definitely that upside there with Ridder. He's probably got a few more question marks than somebody like Willis in terms of throwing the ball. But yeah, like you said, the fact that you're able to bring Cincinnati the best season that they've ever had in franchise history, taking that, going 12-0 and leading them to the playoff semifinals against Alabama. There's a lot of good things to say about Desmond Ridder. It's just that draft capital, and if he can sneak into the back end of the first, then I think I'm with you, Kev. I'm going to start getting a little bit excited about Desmond Ridder. It's just Al have got to get above. He's got him at 5. We both got him at QB4. But yeah, like yourself, I can see him moving up definitely into that same grouping as Corral and Sam Howell, and probably even a touch above those guys.
Yeah, and speaking of Ali being a disgrace in his rankings and messing it up for these QBs, he's got this next guy higher than us too. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of love for this next draft to speak about.
No, I've not got many great things to say. It's Kenny Pickett. He's somehow got his way in here. I think me and you, we both got him QB5, but Ali's trying to bump up those rankings. Got him as his QB3. But yeah, me personally, I'm not a huge fan of him. Just got to look at his profile. Got a late breakout. Really, it's only this past season where he's shown anything, and that was his 5th year in college. There's a lot of concerns. I'm seeing a lot of talk at the moment about the wide receiver that he had, Jordan Addison. Is he the reason that Pickett had that great final year? Because he's a guy that I know in Devy circles, he's right up there as a top wide receiver prospect. So is that a reason why Pickett had such a strong season? And then there's the obvious one that everybody's loved talking about going up to the combine. It's those little hands. We don't want a quarterback with those little tiny hands, and yeah, it's just another reason to be down on Pickett. I mean, for me personally, the hand size thing, it's not as big a deal as what a lot of people make out, but it is still something. I mean, people wouldn't talk about it if it wasn't something. So there's just a lot of red flags when it comes to Kenny Pickett for me. The main one for me personally is that late breakout and the fact that he had an elite wide receiver there that's probably helped inflate those numbers.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. First of all, I just think that every inch counts as a male, so it does matter, and there is a correlation with hand size and production in the NFL. There is outliers, obviously. Joe Burrow's got small hands, but for every outlier, there's 2 or 3 that that stink, especially. And people say, "Oh, he plays in Pittsburgh outside in the cold." I mean, to be honest, Pittsburgh season's usually over by November anyway. So,
well, you do lose a few inches in the cold, Kev. So
maybe if he's in a dome, his hands will get massive.
I think when he did his pro day, he gained half an inch, didn't he? I think so. Fair play to him. I need to find out how he's done that.
Must have been indoors. Must have been warm. But yeah, just pretty much you've nailed everything on Pickett. He's an older guy that's broke out. He wasn't a great passer till the final year. He's got an elite college wide receiver on his team, so there's plenty to be worried about. I called him a bust, someone I'm going to be avoiding back in November. I just felt the profile was something that I wasn't going to be into too much. A funny story with Kenny Pickett, actually. I was in Vegas a few years ago, and my taxi driver was called Kenny Pickett. So, he probably needs to be on your taxi squad or worse, I think. He's nowhere near ready to be on a roster. People say that he's pro ready, but I just don't see it. I just think that there's too many glaring faults in his profile. When I watched him, I thought Carson Wentz, so that should say enough on that, really. He's got no chance. And we'll come on to, we've done our consensus 5, we'll come on to the sleepers now, and I know I mentioned then Kenny Pickett's got no chance. This guy, he's my sleeper, but he's got no chance, really, if we're being honest. I'm going to try and hype him up, but it's Jack Cohen. I think draft capital is going to be massive for any sleeper. I think Cohen is a dark horse to get day 2 capital, maybe sneak into round 3. Easy prototypical pocket passer, so that's not going to get people excited for dynasty, but I do think the NFL will like him. He's played on 2 different programs, and he elevated both those programs. I think it was Wisconsin and Notre Dame. I see a solid backup type in the NFL, someone that's going to be QB 4-5, probably on your taxi with Kenny Pickett, actually, but I think at value, I prefer to take a stab at him a little bit later or potentially undrafted than someone a bit lower down the board, like the guy that was called out on our last show, Carson Strong, or another guy, Bailey Zappi, who are both going way above him in rankings. But I prefer to take a punt on Cohen than those 2, but not too excited with his type of profile.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, isn't it, when you get to quarterbacks? Picking sleepers at quarterbacks, it's tough. It's hard enough just to pick a quarterback when we're talking about the top guys. So the fact that we're now going to try and pick some guys that have got that late draft capital and we're hoping that they can be something in terms of fantasy. I mean, this is the epitome of a dart throw, I think, and trying to find somebody. But yeah, Jack Cohen, somebody that I've not particularly dove too much into. You've thrown him upon me, and I've had to do my best here. But I think that the fact that he transferred over from Wisconsin to Notre Dame, felt like going to Notre Dame, that's where he had his best season, had that big breakout. But I just think in terms of fantasy, just repeating myself yet again, it's just going back to that upside. Doesn't really offer too much in terms of running the ball. So I've just got. It's tough, Kev, when we're talking about quarterbacks. I mean, I'd love to crap all over your pick, but I mean, I've got to do mine next.
Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah, you did pretty well to defend your guys straight off the bat, so can't really have too much of a go at you here.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it on the theme of sleepers we really like at the QB position. Hopefully, you can tell the hint of sarcasm in my voice. So, who's your sleeper at QB, Matt?
Yeah, so my QB sleeper is Cole Kelly. This is a guy that, if you follow me on Twitter, I've spoken about him a little bit. I did a rookie thread on him, and that's where I really found out about him. And there's a lot of things that I do like about him. I mean, I've even managed to get him in his top 10 quarterbacks, so I must be doing something right. He must listen to some of the things that I harp on about. But yeah, this guy's 6'7", 250 pounds, so a real big bodied guy. He was actually recruited by Arkansas, had a lot of troubles over there. Ended up being arrested, I believe, for driving under the influence, and that just led to the demise of him, really, of being over the quarterback at Arkansas. He was in a quarterback battle for pretty much all his time over there, but when that all happened and the crap hit the fan, basically, he decided to move on home, went over to southeastern Louisiana. I mean, I didn't even know that they had a college over there and played college football. But this guy, he went over there and he absolutely dominated. But not surprised, given the fact that he was quite a highly ranked quarterback when he was recruited. Just looking back to this previous season, over 5,000 passing yards, 44 touchdowns. Then added 500 rushing yards as well, and 16 rushing touchdowns. So there's some things that you can like about this guy. Just looking at the adjusted completion percentage, 81.6. That's one of the best in the class. So there's definitely some pros there. I will admit there's some cons. The level of competition, like I touched upon, it definitely wasn't anything special over there at Southeastern Louisiana, and he is 25 years old in October, so it's not like a guy that you can wait on, maybe sit behind at a quarterback and then get his chance. This is a guy that's already getting up there in age, at 25 years old. But yeah, a guy that I like. I can just see a little bit of upside in him. As I say, got that pedigree, the fact that he was recruited by Arkansas, that's something that I'm clinging on to. And if he can get a solid draft capital, which to be honest, again, I'm clutching at straws here because I'm hearing that he could go undrafted, could definitely be a day 3 pick. So yeah, it's a dart throw at quarterback, but this is just a guy that stands out to me in terms of potential if he does get a chance.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say Southeastern Louisiana. It sounds like we're facing off against the Mud Dogs in the Water Boys. I think they're South Central Louisiana. So yeah,
big derby.
Big derby with Bobby Boucher. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that he was a 4-star recruit to a team in the SEC. That's pretty good pedigree, like you mentioned. I've still got concerns at passer. 6'7", 250 is built like a wardrobe, to be honest. It's a big target to try and smash. But yeah, I don't know if he'll change position in the pros, if he might maybe try tight end or like a goal line running back. So he's been pretty decent with touchdowns in a short yardage in his career. So
yeah, it's funny you say that. When I went over and I did a podcast, the 5-yard rush, the guys over there, Liam and Rich made that comp as well. He said this could be the next like a Logan Thomas. I mean, when he said that I immediately switched off because I'm not having that. You're not going to talk about my sleeper compared to a Logan Thomas. But no, I mean, the size that he's got, I mean, you could see it happening. So yeah, maybe I look brilliant. I've got the next future tight end star, and I picked him out as a quarterback.
Exactly, going undrafted in your rookie draft. So yeah, that'd be a great shout. Maybe I've got to share your enthusiasm for it actually, and maybe I like him more than Jack Cohen after we've just finished speaking then. But that wraps up QB. We're going to move on to running backs now, and running back 1 is in a tier of his own. Absolutely love this guy, Brees Hall. I went on 5-yard dynasty recently as well, and he was the guy I planted my flag on before the combine. To be honest, I had him about running back 15 in startups at this stage before the combine. But then when he blazed that speed, I had to move him up massively. I've got him round about running back 7. He's very close to guys like Javonte and Najee now. There's just nothing in his profile that I dislike. The only thing that's missing is draft capital, which we obviously don't know yet. So 3-down skill set, absolute touchdown machine. He's a young declare. He's not 21 yet. I bloody love him, to be honest. I literally, there's no fault. I actually, when I did watch film on him, because people know I'm not a film grinder, I'm more of a numbers guy. When I watch film, I enjoyed watching him. He's got so much swagger. He's called Brees Hall, but he does make it look like a breeze. The fact that he's just no one's laying a glove on him. He's just doing it so smoothly. When he scores touchdown, he's just so calm and chilled out. You just want to root for the guy. Just such an alpha. I'm speechless. What a guy!
I've never seen you like this, Kev. I've never seen you.
in my eyes, like last off season, I said he's my running back 1, so I've got to stick with it anyway. But yeah, easily running back 1. Wow, what a guy!
Yeah, I mean, you've nailed it. Even though you struggled to get your words out there, Kev, I think you've nailed it with the few words that you did get out there. I mean, he's looked brilliant just leading up to like going into the combine. Went over there, just absolutely lit it up. There was obviously guys that didn't perform at the combine, and that just helped elevate Brees Hall even more. The fact that he went out there and did what he did, putting up the 40-yard dash time that he did for a guy that's a pretty big back. You class him as a bruising back, but yeah, the fact that he can run at that kind of speed as well, it's just everything's pointing towards upside with Brees Hall. And again, if you just look back to last year and in Devy circles, this is a guy that everyone was drooling about before we were all getting excited about. Guys like Bijan Robinson and players like that. This is the guy that everybody was talking about. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know why we all try and get cute, don't we? And at times, it seemed like a 2-horse race as we were leading into the combine with Isaiah Spiller, but. I mean, we don't have to overthink it with Brees Hall. He's got that upside. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he can do everything. I feel like he's going to get solid draft capital. Yeah, everything's just pointing towards him being an absolute superstar in terms of fantasy. Getting those Jonathan Taylor kind of vibes, a guy that we've all fallen in love with the fact that he was able to do what he did at the combine. The hype's building, and I think it's for a great reason.
Yeah, Taylor Barkley Hyde. See, I'm still bloody speechless. He just give me them vibes as well. I think as well, in my eyes, I don't know if he's saying for you, but he's my 101 in both formats, 1QB and Superflex.
I think is the safest. Yeah, is the safest one. I mean, we talked about Malik Willis. While he is upside there's risk as well. Feels like Brees Hall. There's very few things to pick in his game. He just looks rock solid, and yeah, I agree with you. For me personally, he's the 101 in all formats.
Pretty good because we're in a league and you've got the 101, I've got the 102. So
yeah, kind of show my hand there, but
yeah, I did have slim hopes, but thanks for ruining that, Matt. We'll move on really quickly to the wildcard consensus running back 2.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker. We've all seemed to have plumbed for him as the RB2 now. I think a little bit of that is down to the fact that Isaiah Spiller, as I mentioned, didn't go to the combine, didn't do the running drills anyway at the combine. That seemed to go against him and didn't really excel in other areas. So Kenneth Walker, I think, moved up by default, but it's hard to pick too many holes in his game as well. This is a guy that, in terms of running the ball, is one of the best rushers in terms of efficiency. Led college running backs in terms of yards after contact. Led them in missed tackles forced. He's just an absolute dominant runner of the ball. Explosive runs, I believe he was number 1 in that as well. So runs over 10 yards, he led that as well. Just in terms of running the ball, absolute dominant. Whether you touch him or if you can lay a glove on him or not, you ain't stopping this guy, and that's something that's exciting in terms of a running back. Maybe didn't show too much in terms of the receiving game, but he's a guy that I think did have it. He just wasn't utilised properly in the running game in college, and going into the NFL, a guy that can be that workhorse if he can get that solid draft capital. I don't think he's getting the same amount of buzz as a guy like Brees Hall is, but if you can get that day 2 draft capital early, day 2, so going in round 2 of the NFL draft, another guy that you can get super excited about. Just thinking of other running backs that have gone in that area previous years, guys like Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, these are all guys that went in the second round. So if that was to happen, day 2 draft capital, don't get too worried about that, because I just feel like NFL teams that they're getting clued up now, aren't they, with these running backs? You don't have to go reaching for an early one. So yeah, just a lot of good things to say about Kenneth Walker, and he's cemented himself quite firmly now as the RB2 in this class for me.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I was pretty shocked when I did my running back model and input everything. The fact that Kenneth Walker, not that it was my running back 2 because that's what I expected, but looking back against previous classes, he had a higher score than guys like Javonte and RJ for me. And that's really shocking to me in the sense that his pass catching profile pretty non-existent. It's below average. I think that is a concern, the fact that it is below average, because if you're going for upside and ceiling, that's going to take you there. Also, it's going to give you a better floor as well. So there's not many players that are sort of not used as well in the past game that hit. There's guys like Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb as the big ones, but I love his profile. He had a big standout game in the derby, Michigan State. Michigan, I think he had 5 touchdowns. That really put him on the map. He's going to go down in folklore for that one season he had there. He'll never have to buy a pint if he goes back to Michigan. But yeah, I think he's rock solid. And to be honest, if I'm looking at my rookie drafts, I'm probably taking him over any wide receiver at this stage. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I just feel that the top 5 wide receivers might be a preview into next week's show, but it feels like they're very similar in that tier. So
yeah, I feel like there's a little bit more depth in there over it at the wide receivers. Obviously, we're gonna cover that in a little more detail on the next show that we bring out. But yeah, I think I agree with you, to be honest. The fact that there is depth at wide receiver, but then when you look at the running backs, to me, there's only really two guys that stand out at the top, and obviously Breece Hall's the pinnacle of that. He's the clear tier one guy, but then I just think there's one guy in tier two, and that's Kenneth Walker. And after that, we're then getting into territory of where there's a lot of question marks about these guys, and for that reason, I think I'm more than happy to maybe you could class it maybe as a reach going for that running back a little bit early, but I just think that what he can do for you in terms of fantasy, there's not many other running backs in this class that can do that.
Yeah, totally agree. And now we're going to move on. We're going to actually drop a tier now to tier 3, which, being honest, it could be absolutely massive, this tier. It could be running back 3 to running back 15 or so. But yeah, this is a guy that you and Ali are both a fair bit higher on than me, but that's probably me just being harsh because of Maggie's Hall.
Yeah, we've gone for Isaiah Spiller here. Me and Ali both got him. Still got him RB3. You've definitely crashed on him RB7 in your rankings. So you obviously weren't impressed that he didn't run over it at the combine. But I mean, I think we are being a little bit harsh on him, and I know all over Twitter everyone's jumping at the chance to be able to crap all over Spiller. But in terms of his production over at Texas A&M, pretty solid. I mean, in terms of running the ball over 1,000 rushing yards in the 3 seasons that he's had there from scrimmage. But as I say, sliding down people's rankings now, didn't run at the combine. That's going to upset a lot of people. Then went and did it at his pro day, ran a 4.640. That begins to be red flags, especially when guys like Breece Hall are putting in 4.3s, 4.4 running times in the 40-yard dash. Yeah, people are now starting to get a little bit worried on Isaiah Spiller, but I still do think that he's shown that production. He's shown that he can catch the ball and run the ball. So there's definitely potential there. There's definitely upside there with Spiller, but I do understand why people are starting to now get a little bit concerned with him and what's happened over in the lead up to the NFL draft. But I still think I'm fine having him as my RB3 at the moment, just because I think he's got the most upside out of the rest of the guys that we've got in this tier.
It's amazing what momentum can do, isn't it? Because early on in the off-season, it was Spiller and Hall as the top two. A lot of people had Spiller over Hall. Mainly film grinders, I think, but that's not me taking shots at them. I mean, they're not very good at fantasy, but they know that.
that was a shot.
That was a shot. If you're listening, that was a shot. He did all right at college. That's my positives. To be honest, I just think it's a worry, the fact that he didn't run until his pro day. First of all, what a stupid thing to do, especially with a fast turf that's been put down in Indy. If you think you're going to be a slow running back, run there. The only one that was strange was Kyron Williams, how he somehow got faster. But yes, that was a bit of a shock for Spiller to do that. He's lost a lot of momentum. But like I said, anything between sort of 3 and maybe 9, 10, I think might be our tier. It's very fluid. I probably just did it for effect to drop him at 7 and cause a bit of debate, but it is what it is. Plus, I wanted to give a bit of shine to the next couple of guys who I think we're both pretty high on. So we'll kick off running back 4 in our wildcard consensus. It's a guy that I've got above Isaiah Spiller, and that's Rachaad White, who's got a cracking surname. To be honest, he didn't do that much in college until his final year. It was a late breakout. I think it was a junior college transfer. So only really got to shine this season. To describe him, you say he's a big dude. He's fast. He's a pretty good catcher. He's just a bit of an unknown quantity, really. So just looking where we've got him, we've got Ali 4, me 5U6, all relatively close. But yeah, he reminded me a little bit of Ramondre Stevenson in the sense that it was a junior college transfer that's sort of moved across and had one big season towards the end. One point of note was JJ Zachariason actually he's got a model of his own, not just me, Wade. But his closest comp to Rachaad White was David Johnson, which I thought was quite an interesting one. The fact that David Johnson had a pretty good career in the NFL. Anything you'd like to add on White?
No, I mean, I think you've nailed it all there. The thing for me is just that uncertainty. Really, only really seen 2 years from him in terms of college football. Last season, though, looked really solid. 1,000 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. But then adding those 43 receptions, 456 yards and a touchdown, that shows that upside in the passing game. So, yeah, while there's not a great deal for us to dive into in terms of the stats, I think just seeing that rushing that receiving ability. It then gives you that little bit of upside in fantasy. If it can be used in the passing game in the NFL, then in PPR leagues, you feel like you're going to be getting some points from Rashard White. So, yeah, comfortable. I mean, like you said, I've got him RB6, but as I say, this tier 3 is quite fluid. And come NFL draft time, if Rashard White gets that solid draft capital, maybe over a guy like Isaiah Spiller, then I'll be moving him up, no doubt.
And I think with White, he's not really had an off season where he's wowed people. He's just sort of stayed solid there because other guys have fallen away. Big one is Kyron Williams. He was meant to be really up there, and because of his combine, he slid. But like we said, they're all really close. You could have him running back 7, and that's probably not too far off either. But we like White. He's got a great name, and he's got that athleticism as well, which I think is key at running back is athleticism.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go on to running back 5, and I'm going to let you kick off on this one, Matt, because even though I've got him high in my rankings, you was in on this guy early. I know you like him a lot, so I'll let you take it away and do all the good stuff.
Yeah, so running back 5, we've gone for Tyler Beatty, the guy over at Missouri. This is a guy that stood out for me quite early. I remember when I was looking at last year's rookie class, he stood out to me because he played alongside Larry Roundtree. He was a guy that I was looking at in terms of a sleeper from last year. Obviously, that didn't turn out great this previous year. He went over to the Chargers and he couldn't get his foot in the door over there, could he, and produce anything. But yeah, just from watching the film from Larry Roundtree, it seems to be that Tyler Beatty was the guy that seemed to be catching my eye all the time when watching that backfield. He's the one that I thought there's something about this guy. The fact that he was used in the receiving game so much is probably one of the better pass catching running backs out of all this class for me, and that's something that drew me in. As I say, just caught my eye when watching the film for another running back. I mean, if you can do that, if I'm not even looking for you and you're standing out, then you've got to be doing something right. And yeah, I just like the profile. It kind of ties in a little bit with like a Michael Carter, doesn't it? A small running back that I'm getting excited about, and the fact that it can be used in the receiving game. But yeah, you touched upon it. I mean, I thought I was having him as my RB5, but don't even come close to you, Kev, where you've got him ranked in your rankings.
Yeah, RB3, which it's pretty crazy.
Love
to be honest,
love it.
In terms of the gap between running back 2 and 3 for me, it's pretty far behind Kenneth Walker. But yeah, I do like Beatty a lot, and I'll just go back to you first of all. You read my mind when we talk about Beatty. I thought he's got a thing for these type of running backs. You know, Michael Carter, your sleeper pick maybe as well. Just Elijah Mitchell, these sort of guys, they're all smaller guys, compact, probably underrated in terms of power, pass catchers. So yeah, you've definitely got a type you go for, and
I've definitely got a type. Yeah,
keeping it on the type you go for theme, it kind of feels like you was watching Roundtree, but actually it was Tyler Beatty. You sort of fell for it. It's kind of like if you're dating someone and they've got a fit mate.
Or if it's sister.
Wow. Absolute scenes on the fantasy wildcard. You're hearing all about Matt and his exhibitions, I guess. But but back to Beatty. I mean, let's just quickly get back to Beatty before
I get outed.
Is your missus listening? No. I just think Beatty ticks a lot of boxes. He's a smaller guy, but he's been really productive in his final season. He was a workhorse despite his size. He had, I think, over 20 touches a game in his final season. He's a pass catcher. He scores touchdowns. He's really underrated in my eyes. One thing that was interesting, I was listening to a Dynasty Nerd show. I mentioned it last week when we had Garrett on, but the comp that they gave to Tyler Beatty, I think it was Garrett and maybe the other guy, Jared, both said Ray Rice. A smaller guy that was massively productive, a complete tool off the field, but on the field, unbelievable for fantasy. I remember one fantasy season going back many a moon when I drafted Ray Rice and Chris Johnson when they were in the heyday, and it was beautiful, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Beatty's someone I like a lot. He's probably going to be a day 3 guy, which is a worry, but we like him. We're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Carter managed to break that mold. I mean, day 3 guy. It doesn't matter, Kev. We can still get excited about these guys, and yeah, he's a guy for me that I think he's somebody you can get excited about just because he's not one of the bigger, strong running backs. That doesn't matter in terms of fantasy points. If you can catch the ball, if you can make people miss, then you're still getting those yards. So yeah, I think he's definitely somebody that's been slept on a little bit, and more than happy to have him in that tier 3 RB5 for me. I think I'm fine with it.
I'm just gutted that the Dolphins decided to go running back here because I'd have absolutely loved him there in that similar scheme to, we mentioned, Elijah Mitchell in San Fran and Michael Carter in New York. With the 49ers scheme into the Dolphins, that had been absolutely perfect, but you still might not. You never know what the Dolphins are doing.
You never know, but it's getting a bit crowded over there. But yeah, a guy that you wouldn't be shocked if he went over there and managed to find himself a role.
Definitely, and the only person we've got to work on with Beatty is Ali. Who I've got him 3, you've got him 5. Ali's got him 9, which what a disgrace. Speaking of disgraceful, though, we're going to move on to my sleeper pick, and to give a bit of context, after our last show with Garrett Price of Dyson Nerds, who's obviously a legend and very knowledgeable guy, I thought I'd speak to him off air about this next chat, get his thoughts on where he was at, because being honest, Matt and Ali have got him 14 and 15 in their rankings. I've got him in my top 5. I've got him running back 4, which I've not seen him anywhere near running back 4 in anyone's rankings. I've even searched Twitter and not found anyone. It was a shock to me that he did end up there in my model, but model's all about trusting the process and seeing what happens. And my sleeper pick is a guy called Devontae Price. So to give you a bit of background on Devontae Price, he's a massive dude. I say massive, 6'2", 210, but he has got the frame to add more muscle to that. He's a 95th percentile athlete with his speed and size, his size and speed score that he produced. An outstanding pass blocker as well. He had a 15 catch season, which shows a bit of upside as a passer. In my eyes, he's got a disgusting flaw. The fact that he could be a day 3 pick, an undrafted pick. He shouldn't be running back 4 in anybody's rankings, but he's in mine. I just love that ceiling. In this class, where it's wide open after the top 2, I think he's got a ceiling to be running back 3. What do you think, Matt?
Well, at first, when you drop these rankings, I thought you were looking for a bit of that engagement farming. I thought you were just trying to get everybody to comment on your rankings when you had him as high as RB4. Yeah, like you said, I've got him at RB15, but I can understand where you're coming from. I mean, the size 6'2", 210, and then the fact that he ran a 4.38 in the 40, that shows upside. I mean, a guy that big that can run at that speed, it's something that you've seen translate over at the NFL. I mean, if you're quick and you're big, you've got dual threat. You can run people over or you can run around them. So I could definitely see the upside there. The only thing of concern for me is, I mean, he's not been super productive in terms of his college game. His best season was the year just gone, and even that just 765 yards from scrimmage. So it's not like he's putting up big numbers in terms of the stat line, but I can see where you're coming from when you're talking about sleepers. Although I mean, you've got him RB4, so can you even call him a sleeper? This is a guy you're hanging your hat on, Kev. So yeah, this is the definite flag plant. But no, I can see reasons why you're going from him. You made some great points, and a lot of it's going to boil down to if you can get that solid draft capital. If you can somehow get into late day 2 or early day 3, then yeah, maybe you don't look as crazy as what you do right now, having him in RB4.
Yeah, I think if Garrett Price is willing to give him a bit of endorsement off air, because I was going to keep it under my hat.
You didn't want to put it out public knowledge.
I didn't want to put it out, but I think if he can give him a bit of praise, then that'll do for me. And you just got to think where you're going your rookie drafts, probably round 5 or undrafted. Mm-hmm. So low risk, high upside sort of guy, and that might be similar to your sleeper pick, Matt.
Yeah, you kind of hinted I've got a bit of a type when it comes to my running backs and my sleeper running backs in Sincere McCormick. A little bit like yourself, Kev. I'm probably a little bit higher than what I should be. I've got him RB7. Ali's got him RB17. You've got him not even in your top 20. So So you're obviously not on board with this one as a sleeper pick, but yeah, Sincere McCormick comes from a small school, but he managed to produce. Freshman year, he had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Then his sophomore and junior seasons, over 1,500 yards from scrimmage. As we touched upon, he's undersized, 5'9", just over 200 pounds, but a really tough run. Even though he is a smaller back, he's quite a tough run. He's shown that receiving ability. He had over 20 receptions each year in college football. Does like that elite speed. So this is not a guy where I'm pinning all my hopes onto his athleticism because he ran a 4.640 at the combine. Improved it a little bit on his pro day, a 4.55, which I heard that was more what he thought he could run. So the fact that he went out on his pro day and managed to improve on that time, like you said, it seemed to be everyone was putting up the best numbers at the combine, but he managed to improve on it a little bit on his pro day. Got that explosiveness, 31 explosive runs, which is runs over 10 yards, which is quite high in terms of this running back class. And he's an early declare as well, just 21 years old. So I do feel like there's some things that are exciting me about Sincere McCormick. The fact that he is from a smaller school is why he's going to get slept on, I think. But I know I did a rookie thread on him on Twitter, and the guy that I comped him to in his play style and maybe what could follow suit in the NFL is a guy like Aaron Jones. Again, he came from a smaller school, went in the 5th round of the NFL draft. But I mean, once he got on the field, it took a while for Aaron Jones to get on the field. But when he did, he showed his ability. And that's the thing I can see in Sincere McCormick is potentially that kind of upside.
Yeah, I think with McCormick, draft capital is going to be huge. I think if he does get day 3 capital, he's going to move up in my model. Just looking at some film grades, Lance Line at NFL.com, he had him running back 28 in his film grade, which isn't ideal, but I do have to concede 20 catches in every season. That's impressive, to be honest, at any level in college. So, draft capital will drive where he goes in my rankings. Hopefully I can get him in that top 25 by the time we get post-draft. Maybe not as high as Devontae Price, so... Right, so that brings us to the end of the show where we've previewed the upcoming rookie class at the QB and running back positions from a dynasty point of view. So I'll get your thoughts on today's show, Matt. Is there anything that stood out to you from tonight?
Yeah, I think just going over, we looked at the quarterbacks. I mean, on a whole, for me personally, it's not one of the best quarterback classes that we've ever seen. We've got a guy that's standing out in terms of fantasy and Malik Willis, but then behind that, it's a bit of a mess, really. I think draft capital is going to play a huge part for those guys who can get that early day one capital. Can somebody like Desmond Ridder sneak into the first round? I think there's going to be a lot of movement in terms of the quarterback rankings, which is something we try not to do. We always say take talent over the situation, but I mean, with these guys, it feels like it's such a level playing field. The NFL draft's going to play a big part in where we rank these guys. And then looking at the running backs again, it's not something that's super inspiring, I don't think, this running back class. But like we talked about, there's a guy at the top there in Breece Hall that really stands out. I know, Kev, you were lost for words, Kev. So Breece Hall definitely a guy that stands out and somebody that I think is going to be really special from this class. But then beyond that, it just seems to be a lot of sleepers. We spoke about Kenneth Walker. He's a guy that I feel solid, but behind that, I'm more than happy to maybe take some shots later on, round 2, round 3 of your rookie drafts, taking some shots on some of these running backs, depending where they landing spots. I think again is going to be key for these running backs.
Yeah, I think just echoing what you say, there's maybe 1 or 2 studs at each position, QB and running back. Then after that, it's just wide open. So yeah, I do actually think I'm going to pat ourselves on the back. I think our consensus rankings should help because you're getting the views of 3 people rather than 1 person. So yeah, we'll blend all our different types of knowledge and views and things that we like to come out with the right. We had a bit adding all the ingredients and come up with the masterpiece at the end, I guess, the signature dish.
The showstopper.
The showstopper. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcard. Also, leave us a 5-star podcast review if you've enjoyed the show today. It really helps with getting exposure to a wider audience. And join us for our next show. We're welcome on the awesome Thor Nystrom to discuss his NFL dream landing spots from the upcoming draft. So thank you once again. Have a good one.